Hi, good evening. Welcome to the work session for the day, the week of Thanksgiving, November 23rd, 2021. We will go ahead and start with the roll call. I do have to tell you that I thought we were missing someone until Clyde informed me that's because I'm sitting here. So y'all bear with me tonight. The mayor will be joining us later, but I do definitely want to welcome all of you new aldermen, because you were here with us last time, but you were sharing spots with those who left us. So this will be a fun evening, I promise. All right, Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Hanson. Present. Alderman Peterson.
Present.
Alderman Berger. I see her. Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Alderman Baggett.
Present.
The other thing I'll go ahead and apologize for, I am so not good at titles. So if I say Matt or Jason, it's not a disrespect. So I'll go ahead and say that. So we have speaker cards. If there's anybody here who wanted to speak tonight before this meeting, did not fill out one of these, you can go ahead and do that. But I'll go ahead and welcome up Mr. Foster.
Thank you. My name is Randy Foster at 3475 Stagecoach Drive in Franklin. I just had a couple of quick comments regarding the Poplar Farms PUD on the agenda later tonight. I'm not going to be rehashing old things from we talked about fast and like Clovercroft traffic and that, but I've had some Franklin residents approach me recently. Want to come over there? Some Franklin residents approached me after the last meeting concerned about not just Clovercroft Road traffic, but how it's going to impact McKay's Mill, their neighborhood. They wanted me to, if I had a chance to speak, to just express concerns about the 5,000 additional vehicle traffic from this development that's going to be going through McKay's Mill. Where I live in Watkins Creek, I work at Lifetime Fitness. I go Clovercroft, Oxford Glen, Liberty Pike, over to Lifetime. A lot of people are going to be going through McKay's Mill from this new development to get over towards Carruthers or Cool Springs. They're very concerned about it being, Franklin talks about making walking neighborhoods. And they say they have a walking neighborhood now. There's a nice little commercial node with Publix, a vet, a couple of restaurants, their dentists, right there. They walk to it, but they go with hundreds, potentially thousands more cars driving through their neighborhood. They said that their Franklin walking neighborhood is going to get ruined. So I would ask the mayor and the four aldermen to consider that, who voted for the plan at the last BOMA meeting, to consider that on top of everything else. This impacts a current well-established Franklin walking neighborhood. It will have a huge impact on it. I also had sent an email earlier today and yesterday to everybody about our Watkins Creek issue. Again, we're hoping that somehow this doesn't move forward in the process tonight. That may be a long shot, but if it does get moving forward, the developer during Planning Commission and BOMA meetings has made comments about, oh, there's going to be a berm and trees between neighborhoods. When I researched that this weekend, I couldn't find any document that stated that. So that concerns me, because somewhere 5 years down the line when things are being built and I mention that, everything's forgotten and this is long gone. So I'd like to have that, if this moves forward tonight, somehow the city can document that they did promise to have berms and evergreens, not what's on their plan now, which is only a document that shows open space. Thank you. I have one last comment to make tonight, and that's just an accolade. I've been involved in different city developments the last 3-4 years. I kind of enjoy coming here and talking to you guys, but I did want to say Emily Wright and her planning staff are the best. I mean, when I don't always agree with their recommendations.
We don't either.
But I tell you, when I go to them, today I emailed Emily, like within 45 minutes I had a response. They always respond quickly, thoroughly, professionally. So you guys have a great planning staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Foster, and thanks for your engagement. All right.
Mr. Foster, may I say one thing?
Absolutely.
Mr. Foster, you asked me about the traffic counts. I did get those today.
Need to punch your,
Well,
turn your mic on.
oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Forgot about that since we're down here again. I can't keep up with all this. You asked me about the traffic counts. And during COVID, which was way down, traffic counts are way down, that was 1,500 cars during rush hour on Oxford Glen with a small roundabout.
Yeah, no, I get hung up there.
So
going through
that's
there.
about half of what it normally is.
And I know they just built that roundabout because
Yeah.
someone smashed
You
into
asked
it.
about that, and I did find it for you. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? I don't have any cards, so we'll go ahead into the agenda. Item number 1, discussion of traffic calming devices. to be installed on Boyd Mill Avenue between 11th Avenue North and Culberson Boulevard. Paul and Adam, are y'all going to introduce yourself to everybody again?
We can. I'm Paul Holzen, the engineering director, and Adam Mosier, our traffic engineer. And a few years back, we've had a neighborhood traffic calming program for many years. About a year and a half ago, Adam and his team rewrote it, reevaluated it, and looked at a lot of different national standards to update our standard in Franklin. And so as you get those complaints in subdivisions and on city streets, you can certainly refer them to that manual, definitely refer them to Adam and his team, and they will evaluate those. And there's certain criteria that they have to meet to truly qualify for it. And we work very closely with those residents in those impacted neighborhoods, and we require them to do a lot of the legwork too, so that we know that we're implementing a traffic calming measure that will be effective, efficient, and accepted by the neighborhood. So in May of 2021, residents along Boyd Mill Avenue requested traffic calming on their roadway. We did evaluate it. It does meet the minimum qualifications for the neighborhood traffic calming program. And so we did meet with those residents. We did do a petition, and city staff doesn't have time to go out and petition every single neighborhood that has these requests. So we really relied on advocate from that subdivision to go out and do that petition. They did do that. They received signatures from 34 out of 47 property owners, which was 72%. Generally speaking, we're going to want over 67% in favor of doing a traffic calming measure. We also will not remove it unless they go back through that petition process as well. And in the packet, you'll see that there was a study completed by Adam and his team, and they counted at 2 locations. The speed limit on Boyd Mill Avenue is 25 miles per hour. They tracked the 85th percentile speed at 32 miles per hour, which means that's one item that qualifies them for the neighborhood traffic calming program. We identified that there truly is a speeding issue on that road. The other item we looked at was the average daily traffic volumes. It's around 1,693 vehicles per day on that. I'll tell you that number's a little bit high for speed bumps, but it's not out of the ballpark. It's not out of the range in which we would expect. We would like it to be lower, but it's within acceptable volume that we would recommend moving forward with this. And so what we're recommending is moving forward with speed humps on Boyd Mill Avenue. The estimated cost is around $22,000. And we would, because it qualifies for the program, we're not necessarily asking permission to, we're just informing you and making sure that you're supportive of that initiative and answer any questions that you have before we move forward with it.
Eric?
We had brought this to the Capital Investment Committee, and that committee asked us to bring it to the full board just for informational purposes, and especially with new aldermen, so you understood how we implement this program.
Anybody have any? Go ahead, Claude.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions or a couple of comments. Number one, I see that the 1,600 threshold makes it over the threshold as far as speed bumps are concerned. I can't see speed bumps on Boyd Mill. I mean, that's not the traditional neighborhood street. I mean, that street's been there for 100 years, possibly. Doesn't necessarily disqualify it, I don't guess. But what you do when you do that is that you drive those people that would use that street going through, and it's 82% of them that abide by the speed limit. You drive them back out on 96, or you drive them over on West Main to go up into West End Circle and then back to Culberson or whatever it is. So you don't accomplish anything. All you do is just push the traffic out. And that's all that speed bump does, because nobody's going to travel on that thing if they don't have to travel on it. I use it fairly regularly. I don't have to. I can go the 2 routes that I just got to name it. And the other thing is that there is probably, looking at what you've got hundreds of people that basically live on that street, don't you? Mm-hmm. You've got the apartments on that one end. You've got the apartments on the other end. You've got Borelli Park Court, which has probably got a dozen homes in it. Buckworth probably has a dozen. And I can't see where, what was it, 37 out of 42 out of 67 or something other. I don't think that's enough for a survey for me or for a petition for me to be able to put no speed bumps on there. I've made no secret in the past that I dislike them because I don't care about driving over and bump. And, well, actually, you can't do a bump, because that's too fast. It's a bump. Bump is more like
right, right.
that. So you have to accomplish the thing if you get bump. But I won't, unless I see more signatures or more petition, more whatever it is on there. And am I not correct? Do you not just push the traffic out someplace else? People are not going to use those things. They don't go through if they don't have to.
Yeah, so this was similar for Alexander and
Excellent example.
in Westfield. So very similar, same speed humps that we would be putting in on Boyd Mill.
But there's a difference between the two streets and the area that you're looking at.
Yeah, there's 1,200 cars on Alexander and Westfield. So we're a little bit more, they're a little higher here. The 47 homes actually represents all of Buckworth, Benelli Court, so they're property owners, so all the properties. And then the apartment complex did have a vote on the end there. I think their property manager ended up signing it, if I remember
He
correctly.
signed for it.
Yeah,
So he signed for 150 to 200 people to drive over those things.
that's right. And,
wow.
yeah, so.
The way our manual works is, apartments are you get one vote per property is the way that works, because there's no way we can truly survey an entire
But you
apartments
have,
complex.
but you still have that number of people driving over those things
That's
to get
correct.
in and out. And it's on the other end too. There's one street that comes out on the other end, on the 11th Avenue side, that also comes out on Boyd Mill. Now, that whole apartment complex doesn't come out on that, but part of it does.
All right, anybody else? Yes, Gabrielle?
Do we not have the opportunity?
No, I think the state, I think, has you cannot have speed cameras on.
Yeah, they're prohibited.
They're prohibited.
I will tell you too, this is the second attempt, or this would be the second attempt. We tried an earlier traffic calming measure where we took the white edge lines and reduced those down to about 11 feet, and it really had no impact. So we've been working with this neighborhood for a long time, trying to come up with a solution, and this is what they asked for, is why we ended up there. And with the signatures is our guiding document for, recommending and implementing it, getting that 67% majority.
At the public meeting, we actually had a very high majority of property owners there, which is very surprising because usually we have like 4 or 5 people show up. So when we had like 25 or 26 property owners show up, there was obviously a concern. They are concerned that they only have sidewalk on one side of the road. Their children, grandchildren come and play in the yard, and they're worried about the speeds, which they are high. Definitely 32 miles an hour, 85% of is going 32 miles or less. So there is a speeding problem there, and our police department actually identified it too as a speeding problem. So they are trying to step up enforcement on that roadway as well.
Yes, Beth?
I got it. Do we have anything on Boyd Mill right now, like we have on Jordan Road, the flashing light that's permanent?
The feedback sign? We don't. We asked them if they would, that was one of the things that we said in the public meeting, and they did not want the feedback sign. They didn't think it would do enough to slow people down.
Well, it does. I'd have 3 of them on Liberty today if I could get one, or 2 or 3, because they do work. They've been working very well on Jordan. People have reported back the speed has really gone down over the years. Because when people go by it and you're going 40 and your speed limit's 30, people have a tendency to immediately slow down because they know they're over the speed limit. They know if a policeman's in the area, they're going to get a ticket. And that, even if they do it out of the fear of getting a ticket, it's better than nothing. I would highly recommend they take a look at that. And
Yeah, we did definitely mention that,
See
and
if
that
it-
would probably be one of our preferences as well.
Sure.
But nobody wants that in their front yard is the other issue we ran into.
is there a
with
way to
that.
put it in somewhere that's not in their front yards?
There's not a lot of
I mean, to
property
the side
available.
between 2 homes?
Yeah, it would
Doesn't have
be,
to
it'd
be
have
in
to
s-
split the
would-
property line.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it in front of somebody's home, but I'd
Yeah.
put it between the homes.
Yeah,
And
and,
there's land over there. These things are not like,
Right.
you know, the density over there is a whole lot less than it is around our other places.
Clyde?
I don't know. Let's do it.
Yeah, forget that every time. Do we have a record, and the chief of police is here, of any citations that have been written on that street? Anything in the last month?
We'd have to look at that. I don't know
Yeah,
that we
look
know
at
that
that.
off the top of our head.
I'm not
I
asking
will
for-
say, we're following the policy you approved in terms of implementing traffic calming. So we're sharing this with you, but it also follows what you approved just within the last year. So if you've got questions, not just about this topic, how does this apply in a broader policy context? We're glad to review that, but I just want to be clear that we're just following the policy that you've
And I'm not saying
approved.
you're not.
Okay.
But I'm also saying this to you. There's a 25 mile per hour speed limit over there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if they've got a speeding issue a citation. If they catch me, I got stopped several years ago over there, and I thought I was missing a pothole in the road, crossed over the center line.
Mm-hmm.
And the policeman said, no, you were doing 40 and a 30. And I thanked him for that, and he thanked me for not running any further over in the other lane than necessary. But, no, issue, you know, I mean, I don't, look, you inconvenience 85,000 people who own that road are putting those speed bumps in there. That's how many people own
We
the
can
road.
certainly look that up for you, I mean, and give you what we've got. Speed enforcement is a sporadic activity. We're covering a 42 square mile city, and, you know, we can do that, and we do that where we see problems, and so that is part of our strategy, but you can't be everywhere at once. So I will just qualify that for you, is that's something we always look at, and we've got multiple places we need to look at, as well as other regular patrol duties. So we certainly can put it on a priority list and
Very
see
true.
what that brings us.
But you've also got the speeding reduction over, is it Culberson or Boyd Mill? Which one is it?
We
Going through
reduced
the
it on,
park.
Boyd
You've
Mill.
got a flashing
Boyd
light
Mill,
over there
yeah.
now. They've got two of them, as a matter of fact.
The pedestrian
They
crossing.
reduce it from 40 to 30. So it's not, it's,
That's not for speed, though, that's for pedestrian crossing? Is
There's you mean where the pedestrians cross?
No,
the-
I mean the
part?
whole- you-
Oh, the police department put out a sign to notify, I think, about the speed limit change.
the speed limit on that road, that portion of the road is gonna be reduced from 40 to 30.
Yeah, that one was inconsistent in two different directions and two locations, so we just made that one consistent recently.
Yeah, because it was 40 from Downs over to 96.
Yeah.
Patrick? Sorry, Miss Ann.
So how many are you recommending speed bumps?
There would be 3 locations. We did get, and it should be in your packet, we got signatures from all the homeowners where they would be installed. And we raised our concern about it because speed humps are allowed. They do cause the shock absorber in springs to make noise, as well as the acceleration after the speed hump.
Especially acceleration.
So we made sure that those property owners signed off on them. They did say they wanted to kind of try it on a trial basis. The good thing about our speed humps that we've gone to, the standard, is they're bolt-in, and they do last up to 8 to 10 years, so they're really, so you can actually remove them really easy. We're not putting asphalt out there and then causing a big problem if we
And why
should
were
take them out.
3, what was it seems there's 3, or why 3?
They usually space them based on how high a speed you can get in between them, so we're trying to, there's kind of a standard on distance between the speed
I think
humps.
it's my first encounter with speed bump.
Yeah.
Speed bump, so.
So we
the
can't put
other-
them too far apart, otherwise you can get up to speed, higher speed, and come back down.
So we've got a large showing of the neighborhood at the public meetings, and they seem to be very positive towards this.
Yeah, that was the only thing they would agree to, because we tried.
We tried to
persuading
steer them
them.
away, and this is what
Yes.
they wanted, and it does qualify as.
And they're easy to
where we ended up.
remove. If, point well taken, Clyde, Alderman Barnhill, excuse me, it will divert more to probably 96. And most of those people probably getting over to West Main. It's a cut through, right? And so 11th Avenue might experience some higher traffic volumes, but a lot less likely to speed on 11th Avenue than on that long stretch there, Boyd Mill.
It's
Yeah,
broken
the
up with stop.
Alexander Westfield actually only reduced it about 200 vehicles per day after we installed them. So it went from like around 1,400 down to about 11 or 1,200.
All right, I had Alderman Peterson.
Kind of a side,
Yeah.
that's right. Aside from this particular situation, I noticed you said that there was a public meeting held in September. It used to be that the alderman would be notified whenever there was going to be public meetings, but I don't know what's happened to that. I used to get things all the time saying when there were going to be neighborhood meetings, and now I never even get the ones that are here in the city hall, really.
they're-
I mean, in this room.
They're more of neighborhood meetings, and I will make sure we do a better job at notifying aldermen, and I'll take responsibility for that, and I apologize.
Yeah, I believe it went out to the ward alderman. Margaret got the notice, but it, yeah.
But, I
agree.
mean, we used to get, as I say, we would get them all the time, and we're not getting them anymore.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that changes, and I apologize. It's
Okay,
on me.
okay.
Jason, and then Bev.
I was just going to ask, in Buckingham, you have asphalt speed humps, and I was going to ask maybe you could give some feedback on that. And I know those have been there for a while, if there's been any successes in regards to that. Alderman Baggett's question regarding the proximity of, 2 to 3 of them together.
Yeah, so I know those were before I got here. Those were installed, and I don't have the history on that. I don't know if.
Yeah, I mean, I know they work at reducing speed if spaced properly, the right number that definitely has an impact on speed and driver behavior. So as long as it's done right, it's usually positive. Now, the negative of it is, when you have high volumes and people that aren't in this petition area, don't live there, call and complain. That's the unique thing about this roadway.
All right, Bev.
I will tell you that the speed humps on the county side of Oxford Glen, what that's done, that just makes people speed up between them, and they do. Don't listen, chief. I do that too. So everybody does it. I mean, you're losing time, and even if you go the speed limit, you have to totally stop at those humps to get over them. Especially if it's a car that's small to the, low to the ground. But it's a funny thing, my son's HOA, Matt, he lives up in Nashville, in a row house, and they met, and somebody had brought in the whole neighborhood about speed humps. And some fella came in with the study that said, here's the proof that you're looking for. People are saying, do they really speed up between the humps? And they go, across the board, they speed up all the time. There was some study, I don't know what it is, I could get it for you if you want it, but it was interesting because it does cause people to speed up because they think they're losing time. Not because they're going the speed limit, but when you slow down, you almost have to stop to go over those. So that really cuts people's time down, and I think that's probably why they do it.
We've had a extreme, and I think I remember, you might have remembered me telling you this, we've had an extreme uptick in neighborhood traffic calming since COVID. So the people that stay home see this a lot more. So we've had tons of studies, and we don't really get, I guess our program's written, nationwide practice through traffic calming policies. But, we don't get a ton every year that actually meet the qualifications in our program, and it's a local,
Yeah.
This is a unique street in that it, as Alderman Barnhill said, it is a neighborhood street, but it also is an option that connects people to other higher volume streets.
It is not a collector roadway.
It is not,
It is a local
it wouldn't be in the program if it was a collector. Collectors aren't included
They do not,
typically.
yeah, typically they do not.
Yeah.
So it's just a local residential road, it's not a collector or
Correct.
collector.
Local
It
street.
is a local road with a high volume that also isn't limited to just neighborhood traffic. You talked about Buckingham, well, that's all the residents that live there. In this case, it is the residents that live there and other people who are going to Jim Warren Park or driving to other places as an alternative to being on 96 West. So, I get the difference here, but it doesn't quite rise to the collector level, and so it qualifies for the program.
All right, so we've spent a lot of time on speed bumps.
One more thing, though, and I'm going back to, and both of you, I think, would know about this, the ones that were talked about in Royal Oaks, remember, a few years ago? Did they eventually decide not to do? Did that neighborhood
Are you
decide
talking about
not?
Jordan Road?
No, I mean, in Royal Oaks.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Clyde, did you have one more comment so we can move on?
Buckingham is totally different from this. I mean, Buckingham wants it just one way in, people that live there, and you've got 2% traffic, it's probably somebody else, 98% of them, and if they want speed bumps, welcome to it.
So when is this on to be voted on? Are we not voting on it because we're?
It really doesn't
We just gotta
necessarily
throw it out
qualify
there.
for a vote because
Okay.
it fits the policy you've approved.
Understood.
But if the board is uncomfortable with it, we want to hear you. I mean, that's why we brought it to the Capital Investment Committee because it was a higher volume road. So if there are concerns, we can certainly engage the neighborhood more or get you more information or look at this. But we did want to, as a courtesy, share it. And the committee asked us to share it with the whole board
guess I
because of the unique nature of it. I mean, so we do want your feedback, but it does qualify for the program as it's written today.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on, item number 2, consideration of resolution 2021-138, a resolution declaring an existing section of right-of-way known as Simmons Ridge Drive, generally located east of South Crothers Road and north of Long Point Way as surplus.
So Simmons Ridge is a development, as she just stated, east of Crothers Parkway there. As they're going through the development process, they have platted internal right-of-way to the city of Franklin. So it's internal to their development. And they've since changed their plan slightly. And the way we dispose of surplus property is once it becomes ours, we have to go through a public process, have the board declare it as surplus, and then they can replat it the way they need to for their development. So it takes your authorization to declare it surplus. That's what we're doing here today, and then they can proceed with their development.
Everybody good on that?
Yeah,
We just picked
I
up
am,
some
yes, except I was going to say, there's a lot still going on out there. This is at the end of, Honeybush Circle, but there's a lot of other property out there. So are they thinking they're not going to do anything, north?
No, they just need to revise it slightly,
Okay,
is what they're
revise it.
doing.
Thank you.
It was a
Thank you.
mistake on their part.
All right, item number 3, consideration of City of Franklin contract 2021-0271, a professional services agreement with Ground Penetrating Radar Systems, LLC, for advanced underground utility investigations for the Liberty Pike Mallory Lane intersection improvements.
So roadway projects, probably the most challenging part of any roadway project is the utilities and dealing with the utilities. And a lot of times we'll get under construction and we'll start running into conflict after conflict after conflict, which is really problematic to traffic. It delays and extends the project. And what we've historically done is relied on utility locates. What we're finding is those utility locates are extremely far off from reality. So when we're designing something, if we're shifting a water line 5 feet, to miss something, we need to know exactly where it is and to avoid these conflicts. So this professional services agreement, they'll go out and spend a few weeks actually locating everything physically in the ground for us and provide us with the necessary CAD files that we need to make decisions and appropriately phase the project. So it's a little bit of money, but I promise you, if we don't do this, we'll pay a lot more in change orders, significant amount
Yes,
more.
Beth?
So will this also identify the issues for the temporary locations of utilities during construction?
Yes.
So this will play into all of that?
Plays into everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And will the contract work and price also include Stanwick in the roundabout all the way down?
Yes, includes the entire job length.
Okay,
Yep,
That's all I need to
everywhere we're
know.
going to touch.
good.
So somebody said they don't like speed bumps. I don't like roundabouts. So this is right in front of my neighborhood. Not only one, but two. So I need a heads up when to put my house up for the market.
And that
Because it's
fella,
coming.
that fella I stopped to let out at Church Street tonight, everybody honked the horn at me for letting him out. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
it's
dear."
gonna be a.
He's gonna get out.
There we go. It's not my speed, it's just, I don't, yeah. Item number 4, consideration of resolution 2021-160, a resolution to accept the streets in Trent Park, Section K of Fieldstone Farms as public roadways and rights-of-way. Mark?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My name is Mark Hilty, Assistant City Administrator of Public Works. Appreciate your time.
And Steve Grubb.
And Steve Grubb. Thank you. As the title suggests, this resolution proposes to accept the roadways and rights-of-way in Trent Park as public and ongoing public maintenance. So to give you a little background, Trent Park is a sub-association within Fieldstone Farms. There's a map here depicting that. If we can go to the next page, please, it'll give a better context of the location. There we go. So it's west of Hillsborough Road is that green blob along Fieldstone Parkway at the northeast intersection of Lexington. Oop, zoom back out there, please. There, on the left side of the page there. So there's about 130 homes in this sub-association. When this was built in the early 90s, the streets were deemed to be private roadways and ultimately private maintenance responsibility as well. As time has gone on, several years ago, the HOA leadership approached city staff because they're contemplating resurfacing the streets in that subdivision. They asked us if the city would consider accepting them as public roadways. We had a long dialogue with the HOA leadership. One of the things that we get a number of requests. We have relatively few private roadways at Franklin. This is one of them, and by the way, this is no longer a practice. I think it is not allowed by the zoning ordinance. But but one of the things that they did was they made an investment of about $300,000 to bring the roadways back up to a standard that is consistent with our standards today. When they did the work in June and July, we had inspectors out there and making sure that the work was being done appropriately. So again, what they've requested of us and what this resolution would do would be to accept essentially ownership of these roadways. They would become the maintenance responsibility of the cities from now until the time those streets no longer exist.
They've become public streets.
Correct. Yep. So one of the questions we've been trying to answer is what would that look like in terms of a financial commitment to the city? We've been doing some work in the pavement preservation realm over the past few years and looking at the way we've been doing that and then ultimately doing a resurfacing in 25 or so years. We would expect a total investment to be about $150,000 over a 25 to 30 year period. So just to give a little context. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and go from there.
So, Matt, since that's your ward, I saw your hand first. Go for it.
More than a comment than anything, which is, I know there's a couple of these in Fieldstone Farms that are private roads, but this group has invested a lot of money, a lot of time. They've gone through the process. If any of the neighborhoods within Fieldstone certainly qualify for us to do this, I think these folks have come to the table. They've been accountable. They've put skin in the game, and we're talking about less than a mile worth of road anyway within there, and we wouldn't let we wouldn't let roads be built this way anymore today anyway. So I think wherever we can do this, especially where you see a community put in $300,000.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have had a number of requests over the years. This has been the first subdivision to actually step up and do that work.
They have a
to my knowledge.
reputation based on the sidewalk project that came through in the last year or so, and then this, so.
This is a smaller section, but yeah, this group has done it, and as Mark said, we get these requests on a fairly regular basis. Usually, when they find out what it takes to get to city standards, that kind of ends the conversation more often than not, but in this case, they went through it and determined that it was worth their while to make the investment, and since they brought it up to an acceptable standard, it makes a lot of sense, and that's why we're recommending it.
Clyde,
I have no problem with that. The roads now, they pay, they're up to city standards. When we take over, we estimate that we'll have $150,000 worth of maintenance over the next 25 years on this few roads right here. So what is the total length of the road, all of it?
It's just shy of 1 lane mile, so that's a 12-foot wide, 1 mile long stretch of roadway as an equivalent.
So how many, let me back up a little bit.
Sure.
When we did this under the guise of affordable housing. So we allowed, I guess, 8 units to the acre. Oh, I'm sorry. Push, thank you there, partner. We allowed 8 units to the acre, knowing that they were gonna be private streets, because those streets even then didn't meet our standards. And that's the reason that you've got situations like this that come up. But if they've spent $300,000 to bring them up to standards and they meet the city standards, I have no objections to taking them as private, as taking private streets off and put them on as public streets. And we maintain them then. They're there, and they should, I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, it should never have been private streets to begin with.
From what you said, it was on your watch.
No, it was on Dana McClendon's watch.
So
Dana voted for that.
if I may, the streets have been milled and resurfaced to our
They look
standards. They are
very good.
They have met our
I went there
standards, yeah.
today.
Yeah.
This is not out of line for what you'd expect to pay in our public streets that have always been public streets. That's not an extraordinary cost at all.
Ms. Ann?
Well, I was going to say, I did go out there and the streets really look very good there. The other thing is though, how many different private areas do we still have out there? Because I know this is not the first one to come in and become a public street, as I recall, because didn't they used to have some gated parts or something like that?
To my knowledge, I don't think that they've been accepted as
Those
public
haven't
at
been
this
public. If
point.
they're gated, they're not.
No, okay, not gated, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think there were some other areas out in Fieldstone that once upon a time were,
I think Matt can answer that.
In my time here, we have not, this is the first one we've converted
well,
from
this could have been a long,
private
no,
to
a
public.
long
So
time.
there might have been something further, longer ago.
They've not been converted. The ones up, if you go Fieldstone Farms Parkway before it dead ends there, you got the reserve on the right, which actually is gated and does have a different, it actually has a different setup, I think even. You do some collection there. That's like a hybrid, that one is. It's like, it's still public-private kind of, and then the one across the way is the one that's still private.
Private, yes, sir.
Yeah, yes.
But now, do you we pick up the garbage though?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
All right, any other questions on that one, comments? All right, item number 5, consideration of ordinance 2021-39, an ordinance to amend Title 16, Chapter 1, Section 16 of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to maintenance of street trees and the right-of-way.
My blood is not shooting out of my eyes. Not yet.
Not yet. We'll get there. Don't worry. So thank you. So back in March of this year, staff presented to the board at the time a presentation with respect to street trees and how some of the issues that we've been facing, and wanted to get some guidance from the board and go from there. So what I'd like to do tonight is largely go through a very similar presentation and then speak about the proposed ordinance 2021-39. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So street trees, they provide a great deal of benefit in terms of improving water quality, runoff. They increase property values, and they do contribute a great deal of character to our community.
Do they reduce stress? Bottom one.
People have argued that, yes. So what we have here is an example of a street cross-section. And of course, under roadways and along the sides of roadways, you have utilities such as water and sewer, electrical, gas, so on and so forth. We view the street trees as an asset, as green infrastructure, if you will. And it's important that they get regularly maintained as we do with other infrastructure. So a little bit of history, in the 1990s, city leaders saw the benefit to having an urban forest and street trees. They started requiring it in commercial subdivisions in 2002, and they expanded that, in the 1990s, they expanded that to residential subdivisions in 2002. And then there's been some updates along the way, one of the largest ones in 2008, if we can go to the next one. So the current maintenance requirements, there's a couple of sources for these requirements, one of which is the zoning ordinance, and as a development goes through the development process, it is often established in that process who is required to do the maintenance and replacement of street trees. There's another piece in municipal code that if there's not a contract, if you will, for street tree maintenance, that the adjacent property owner is responsible for the maintenance and replacement of street trees. So we've had these requirements in place for a number of years. We've been designated a Tree City USA. We've had that designation for 16 years, which has been great. But as you know, these trees continue to grow and maintenance continues to grow. We go to the next one. So as you can very well understand, you get limbs overhanging roadways, you get roots that buckle sidewalks. They present at times trip hazards that we have to go out with Steve's crews and repair them. So the maintenance left to the adjacent property owner often is not done very well. If we can go to the next one. So some of the issues we face today, and this is one of the interesting things, is the adjacent property owners that are responsible for the maintenance. An example would be Maplewood subdivision. That's a neighborhood that where there's not a landscape maintenance agreement. Most often, the property owners in there are unaware that the maintenance of those street trees are their responsibility. And we get, of course, a lot of shock and kind of, how am I supposed to afford this? Because maintenance of a street tree is rather costly, as we do know. The other thing, too, is those trees that don't get maintained proactively, we have a lot of impact to city vehicles, buses from county schools. They'll hit the sides and the roofs of them, causing damage. You damage the trees in addition, so that's not healthy for the tree either. So what we endeavored to do in March was to get some guidance to kind of develop a program to be more proactive in how they get maintained and clarify maintenance responsibilities. We can go to the next one. Thank you. So in March, the board presented us with the following, really the 4 highlighted points here, based on the conversation that we had at the time and some staff recommendations. First of which is to have the city continue to require HOAs maintain the street trees as developments come through the process. The city to take on the maintenance of street trees where there's not an existing contract, whether it's through a landscape maintenance agreement or an HOA agreement, and update the municipal code and zoning ordinance accordingly, which I think you'll see an update to the zoning ordinance here in the near future, if that's not already coming through. And then, of course, this proposed ordinance to update municipal code. And then lastly was to develop a more proactive tree maintenance program. And in FY22 budget process, Parks Department presented a performance enhancement request to add staff and equipment in order to create crews to go out and more proactively maintain trees and get ahead of buckling sidewalks and damage to vehicles and things of that nature. So with that said, staff from a number of departments, and I can't speak to all the names, but it's planning, sanitation, and environmental services, street department, parks department, I'm going to forget somebody. I apologize, but we had a group of staff work together to develop the language that's in the proposed ordinance that you have in front of you this evening, and try and clarify that language and kind of move forward so we have a more proactive program. I would like to highlight in the proposed ordinance, there's some of the key changes in here are items D. where, and I'll read this section, where street trees are not associated with a development with a specific HOA or POA, the city shall be responsible for street tree maintenance and replacement. So areas where there is not an existing agreement for the maintenance of street trees, the city will be taking that on with the new crews if this passes. The second one I'd like to, and again, that's really for the benefit of the, sidewalk infrastructure, curb and gutter systems, et cetera, as well as vehicles. And then section E, one of the things is if there's we tend to struggle with areas where there is a maintenance issue, having the ability to make sure maintenance is done. Say, for example, we're getting damage to a sanitation truck that continuously goes through a neighborhood and it's ripping off mirrors and things of that nature. We put in this proposed language to have the ability to go in and perform maintenance and recoup costs as necessary. So I wanted to point those two items out because those are I'd say the biggest differences between the current language and municipal code than this. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions and we can go from there.
Alderman Brown.
I may have just missed, can we quantify how many of these neighborhoods exist? I mean, I'm assuming they gotta be old. I assume no new neighborhood would be.
No new neighborhoods are.
Do we have any idea what we're taking on when we say that we're taking it on?
We've started digging into that specifically, but I don't have an answer
Could be
for
a
you
very
this
large
evening. It
number.
could be. Mhm. And the idea is to get ahead of these maintenance activities, so we don't have sidewalk buckling and we don't have.
Well, the concern is that they're gonna all be old neighborhoods. There's probably gonna be quite a few of them, which means they're also gonna be mature trees, which means you're probably gonna need even more maintenance than most, because either they're gonna be totally taken out or replaced, especially, we use a lot of those 40-year pear trees around here and all that kind of stuff, so they're gonna come out pretty quickly.
Yes.
So it seems like we're definitely signing up for fairly significant.
We know the street trees are going to, it's something that we believe needs to be done, and we haven't quantified that yet, no.
Alderman Baggett.
Thank you. With all due respect to our friends at Middle Tennessee Electric, they have a tree maintenance program that really miffs, if that's appropriate to say.
It's all right.
A lot of folks.
You're in charge of yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. There's other ways to say it, I'm sure, but I'm concerned about the program. I mean, I not get in the weeds, but understand like the problems that you brought up. Obviously, protection of property, making sure we're not further damaging sidewalks or creating a safe place for our residents. But I just don't want the creep of this to turn into, well, here comes the city cutting down our trees, and we're fielding, well, that tree was perfectly fine, and here and we've got, created more problems. I mean, is there a balance? Has that been contemplated in how much, how we define maintaining the street trees? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and we are not in the business of topping trees or whatever the terminology is.
That's correct.
Thank you. So, yeah, and what we're looking to do is make sure the trees mature as much as they possibly can without having impacts to infrastructure, vehicles. So the idea is that we want these trees to be as large as they can within the space that they're allowed to grow. We do have 2 arborists on staff that's going to support it. They're not titled as arborists necessarily, but we do have 2 staff members that are arborists, maybe 3 at this point. So we will be working with them. The Parks Department was the department that put in the program enhancement request for the staffing. It's really going to be a joint effort with planning and street department and parks department to make sure these are done. Well, I understand the concern, but I think we believe that being a designated Tree City USA is important, and we want to keep it that way. Those are the assurances I can give you in this meeting. But there's We do have an example right now out on downtown here. And we're working very closely with property owners to make sure that we're doing what's best for the area, not because it's simple to cut a tree down. That's not what we're all about, so.
Yes, Beth?
The other thing I would compare it to is what we do with street resurfacing. It's systematic. We go through and we look at needs and we cover the city on a regular, systematic basis to make sure we're hitting those regularly and maintaining so that it doesn't become a longer-term problem. Right now, they're going unaddressed, which creates all these larger problems, right? So if you're on it and you're on a systematic rotation, you can address them before they become larger problems, and that's the concept behind it.
Beth?
Okay. When I made the comment about blood shooting out of my eyes, it's because these gentlemen are tired of dealing with the 6 years of on and off again with trees on Liberty Pike and Oxford Glen. So for 6 years, the city's come out, they've taken trees down, they put in trees up, some have died, then they put the wrong trees in, they put in maples, we're not allowed to put maples in. So we were in the midst of, a couple trees have died, a few trees have died, some have been put in incorrectly because they were the wrong type, like maples. So we're working that out, right? And we're gonna fix what was put in wrong, and we're gonna take care of that now. So we can, you've assured me, Mark and Steve, that we're gonna fix that and not just leave them high and dry. We're gonna take down the ones that we're gonna put in wrong and stuff like that. But I still have a bone to pick with that, even though we have that on our, let's see, the plan for the 1,300 homes over there. Liberty Pike and Oxford Glen are arterial and collector roads. So that is like massive amount, hear me out, we'll talk Oxford Glen here, massive amounts of traffic coming in that area. So I can see in these HOAs where you have people going into their HOA, going into the subdivision, and they're not actually traveling through to get to a major road or traveling through. But it seems to me there's a few streets around town that are major arteries that people use within these subdivisions with HOAs that are like our city street that is well traveled. It's not your residential street at all. And I just thought maybe we should still think about doing those roads. But, and that's maybe one road. Maybe that's a max of 2 roads, if any, on most subdivisions. I don't think you get many subdivisions that have that kind of pass-through. You've got Turning Wheel Lane, that's sort of different, but you got Liberty and Oxford Glen are major pass-through areas. So I just want to throw that out there. The other thing I want to know about, since we're a tree city, and you were on that board, are you still on that
10
board?
years and running.
There you go. It's like me and the beer board, you know? You can't get off once you get on. But, so those trees, we do provide, isn't that part of the thing when we're a tree city that we provide these trees? That
We- We
don't?
have a tree bank.
Yeah, so what do we do with this tree bank?
Well, a lot of the times the tree bank is being planted to mature so you can actually do something with them. There's different variations and heights of when those trees are actually usable.
10 years, though.
Well, I mean, it's,
10
we have
years.
used some of those, we have used some of those over in Forest Crossing in the past. There's also the idea of whether it's an understory tree or a canopy tree. And so,
Right, exactly.
I don't know that we're ever going to be able to meet all the needs
Oh,
of
no,
the
no,
city.
no, but some.
But it's definitely, number one, it's a green way for us to be a partner with Tree City USA, but also doing the right thing by having that use.
Yeah.
And there's more than just one place.
All right, so some of those trees that were put up incorrectly, the maples, they need to come over, the ones that are still alive, they need to come over and take those up, if they're still alive, during the winter time and replant them somewhere else where that's needed, but not a street tree. But the other thing you mentioned is, because I know I'm not going to win this battle with you guys, because of this, the plan that's in that subdivision or another subdivision we're talking about as well. But when you mentioned there was 2 arborists on staff, but I'm told we don't use the arborist and that we needed to hire an arborist.
So they
And-
changed the title so it's more an urban forestry manager.
Exactly.
So that we have more of a lateral staff, not just one person. Lisa, am I hitting this
Right.
right?
Yes.
So that we almost
told her
have
that.
more bang for the buck, and we've got several different people who can not only go out and perform the work, but be responsible for the work because of their level of expertise.
Right. So when you all told me that it's more lateral and that urban, what was it, urban
Forestry.
forester? So are they going to be able to actually go out and perform the duties of the arborist, even though they are designated arborists? Is that correct?
That's the way it's set up from an org
They-
chart.
They
They are trained
They're
arborists,
trained
yes.
and they're certified?
Yes.
Okay. So I hope that we're going to use them more because I think once Todd was out of that position, I just felt like we were, I had people come out and look and they said, well, we don't have an arborist right now. We really can't do this. We don't have an arborist. And so we sat for a couple of years not doing anything. And then all of a sudden, boom, they appear and put in some trees. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay.
All right.
I'll leave it go, but you know where I'm coming from on that.
Miss Ann and then Claude.
First of all, I want to know where some of these problems are, and because we don't know how many or anything like that, but just give us some examples. But also on page 7 of the presentation, I think I saw this before, and I maybe have asked this before, but what is that street on the bottom there, on the right, bottom right? Where's that?
31 and 431. Yeah, 31. Going down.
No,
towards-
no, I mean, where, I want to know the location of it.
What's the green sign say?
It's Nashville,
It's like, where'd you take that picture?
yeah.
Is that
I
on
mean,
Hillsborough?
I-
No.
I didn't take the picture. I think the picture is really supposed to give an example of tree branches in the way of signage.
Yeah.
Hence a
There.
maintenance requirement.
Where do you think it is?
You don't think it was Fayetteville?
I don't
you
think
went
it
to?
matters.
I don't think it was Fayetteville, no, sir, but,
I don't
yeah.
think it matters.
That might be the intersection of Lewisburg Pike and
I think
McHatcher.
it's Lewisburg.
And you're heading northbound
Has to be.
on Lewisburg Pike.
Oh, it is.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Claude?
One comment.
Yes, sir.
I'm very appreciative of Middle Tennessee Electric because I did not have any interruptions in February in the ice storm.
Put the
None.
utilities
And if
underground.
that's a result of the tree trimming policy that they have, kudos to
Put
that.
them underground.
So I just want to make a comment and then a question. So I know that in the historic district, there are certain trees that based on their caliper, you may not remove them unless you're willing to pay a certain price per caliper or, so that's one thing. So I want to make sure that we abide by the same rules that we put on our citizens, number one, or you replace it with that many different trees that add up to that caliper. So I think we need to play by the same rules when at all possible. The other thing that I'm going to say, Steve Grubb, is when this was brought up, it really kind of started in downtown when we were talking about different things.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think we're kind of pulling the reins back into where we started, which I'm appreciative of. But I want to make sure that because downtown is such a beloved and it's what we're known for, that this program is not going to be changing that particular area. That's kind of where we started and where we went. Everybody got up in arms, and now we're coming back. So I don't want downtown to be slid into this program and us be like, oh, wait, we didn't sign up for that. So that's just kind of like I'm watching. I just want to make sure that we're aware because I think it did get out of it. It was a small little project from the streets department that turned into a multi-million-dollar refacing of our main street when it came to trees and sidewalks. So I just want to say that I want us to be really careful.
2.2 million.
Yeah, it got crazy.
This is not the streetscape program. To
I
be
know,
clear,
but it
this
started
is-
with tree trimming
This
and
is not,
roots.
the streetscape will be a different discussion. And
Okay.
this is something that came from some other issues that we are running into in
Okay,
neighborhoods,
but
not
again-
just downtown.
Understood.
Give us, give us a list of some
Financial
things.
impact.
And thank you. And financial impact too.
All right, moving right along, item number 6. Consideration of change order number 8 to City of Franklin Contract 2017-0264 with Kiewit Infrastructure South Company for the Water Reclamation Facility Modifications and Expansion Project. Michelle.
Good evening. So this is our current construction project that we have at the wastewater plant that's over on Claude Yates behind Franklin High. So this is change order 8, which is it's a little over $1 million. And if you look at, so in the attachment that's included in the agenda, there kind of, if you look at some of those items, I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about some of those high dollar items. So one of them is CCA 47 and 48, which is quickly, it's some piping changes. So a lot of, when we start a construction project, as you probably all know, there are a lot of, we're working in an old plant, so working in a plant that was built in the 70s. Sometimes the drawings are not quite as accurate as we thought they would be. And so we're designing off of those drawings, which we find in the field are not accurate, so we have to make a lot of changes. This one in particular is, we pre-selected the thermal hydrolysis equipment. We were the first one in the country to have this type of equipment, or this small piece of equipment. And since then, the manufacturer has kind of learned had some lessons learned in some of their piping and some of their viscosities and traveling through pipes, and has changed a lot of that to be bigger diameter. So that's kind of just a summary of what a lot of these changes are. As we work with an older plant that's 30 years old, a lot of that equipment that's been running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is old. And we kind of were waiting for this project to replace a lot of it. So a lot of the aerator, the blowers and motors and gearboxes has been replaced as part of this because that equipment was just old and dying.
So you still have $1 million of contingency remaining after this. My understanding is there's another change order coming that will be deducted in nature?
Yeah, so change order, right, so change order 9 is what we're working on now, and that'll be a larger, almost a $300,000 credit that will be coming from the contractor, so that will offset a lot of this. So we're hoping to present that on the 14th agenda, I think is our plan, if we can get it all moons aligned.
Go ahead.
So besides this one, then you said we also have another $1 million in
You already
contingency?
have, you still
Another?
have $1 million remaining, well,
After?
$974,000 remaining in
And then-
contingency in the project.
And then we get the
Then
300.
this next one will actually bring that number back up.
Lower.
Around $1.3 million. So,
All right.
yeah, that will
All right,
improve
got it.
your position there,
Thought we
and
had
you
a-
are about a year away from completion.
We call those deducts, and they're awesome.
So this change order also adds 6 days of time to the construction schedule, and that's from the ice storm that we had in February. They weren't able to work at the site during that time, and then there was a couple days
did?
after that where they couldn't work.
All right. Anybody else have any other comments? You'll learn the whole water treatment thing as you go on. It's quite daunting.
Usually we present these at CIC, but
Yeah. So, item number 7, consideration of Amendment 1 to City of Franklin Contract Number 2016-0046, interlocal with Williamson County and Williamson County Emergency Communications District regarding dispatch services.
I'll go ahead and start this one off. A little over 5 years ago, we consolidated our emergency dispatch with the county, and I believe overall that has been successful. And this rolls over that original 5-year agreement into another 10-year agreement. The cost overall is a little over $500,000 a year. They say that equates to 15 positions. We could never fill 15 positions at that cost, but it continues on that arrangement, provides for the interaction we have a couple times a year to check in on quality and any other issues in terms of service. Like I said, it has worked better to work in a larger communication setup that has served us, created a career path for telecommunicators, folks who work in that line, and actually Spring Hill has come on in the last year to that as well, so it's even more of a regional emergency communication center. So overall positive, and the city's leadership was critical in moving this forward. And also the same partnership has worked on the countywide radio system as well.
See a lot of nodding heads, so everybody's happy with that.
Did they have a breakdown on that system of or 12 or 48, 12 or 24 hours. No, they had a couple hours. Didn't they have a, or it was broken down one time?
We've had,
Right.
there have been a time or two where there have been issues with
And then we
the
repatched it?
911 system,
Yeah.
and we've had to do some alternatives. We do have a backup arrangement. Brentwood has
So
a
do
small
we-
communication center, and we back each other up, so we're able to have continuity that way. So the radio system and the communication elements itself have functioned. We have had rarely, but occasionally a situation where a number went down,
Yeah,
and we
I
had to
think
do
we had a couple
alternatives
of
for a
those.
short period of time.
Well, we have
And of
that.
course, we held it all together last Christmas, in the wake of the bombing. We were able to keep the systems going, but we had to work through some alternative
Mm-hmm.
paths to make that work.
But we have, at the city, we have our own ability to do that, or is it with Brentwood?
No, there's backup at the communication center.
Yeah.
And Brentwood and Franklin serve as each other's backup. In terms of the radio system, we're actually linked together in our
Clear.
redundant
Okay.
systems between Williamson County and Metro
right,
Nashville.
got it.
And it also links into the state system, and
Good.
that system also
Perfect.
continues to expand.
Good, yeah, thanks.
All right. Item number 8, consideration of resolution 2021-171, a resolution to approve the Tennessee State opioid abatement agreement. Shawna?
Good.
So as you guys probably remember, the state of Tennessee, along with all the other states, have entered into potential settlements with Johnson & Johnson and their subsidiaries for the opioid lawsuit. And that doesn't involve the other ones. This is just Johnson & Johnson. In order to be part of this settlement agreement, we have to draft a resolution that would give the mayor authority to sign documents, the settlement agreement, on behalf of the city. By doing that, over the next 18 years, when the state of Tennessee gets any sort of money from the settlement, which is significant, I think it's like $213 billion total across the United States, and then we would get a portion. Some portion would also then come to us. If we do not do this, we will not get any portion of the settlement money. So it's very important that we, in my opinion, that we sign these agreements and enter into these settlements.
Can you explain just briefly the use of the money so that it makes sense?
Sure, so
Because
there's,
it's earmarked.
right, it's earmarked, and for, it's 3 different buckets, but what's really important to us are two buckets. One bucket is money that's based on restitution for things that have happened in the past. So that money, when it comes to us, that comes out of bucket number 1, has to be spent on opioid-related payments that the city has already made. So training for Narcan, hours for officers, if we can calculate that, we will have no problem spending that money. It also will pay for any sort of counseling, maybe that our officers might need, because they respond to these calls and they are emotional. Moving forward, it has to be opioid related, but if what we say is we need another officer, we need another firefighter, we need another truck, we need another car, we can use it on cost moving forward. So it's a little bit broader with the second bucket of money.
Shauna, you just tell everybody what Narcan is, just to be sure everyone knows that, even people listening.
Well, Chief could probably explain it better than I could.
Well,
But it is so if someone is overdosing on opioids, this would be the medicine that hopefully would help them survive or reverse, right, the impacts of the opioid. And sometimes I think it takes more than one shot to help.
Thanks, I just want to make sure everybody who
Yes,
might be listening
that's
knows
good.
what that is.
All right. Item number 9, consideration of procurement award to Site Med North America LLC of Garner, North Carolina, and the total estimated annual amount, of $99,665 during the initial 1-year term of award for firefighter annual physical medical exam services for uniformed personnel of the Franklin Fire Department. Deputy Chief Andy King's here, but this is just kind of a
Straightforward bid award. Any
no.
questions?
All right, item number 10, consideration of resolution number 2021-168, a resolution authorizing the use of the competitive sealed proposal procurement method for choosing the service provider for comprehensive banking services, including general banking and lockbox processing for the finance and revenue to management departments.
This just authorizes us to go into a competitive process. We're on a 4-year cycle for looking at our banking services.
And Mike, I think this is the first time our new friends have seen you, so would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Good evening. My name is Mike Lowe. I'm the city's comptroller in the finance department.
If you're on budget and finance, you will get to know him quite well. So, thank you all. Item number 11, discussion of proposed amendment to closed pension plan that could benefit employees who have been injured on the job that are near retirement by authorizing a modification to retirement formula.
So this is an amendment to our existing pension plan. It provides for a circumstance where someone may be near retirement and have a work-related injury. And when they're on that disability, they receive compensation, but it is tax exempt, and by the definition in our pension plan does not qualify for the pension compensation calculation. So what we don't want to do is have an inadvertent disadvantage to an employee that got hurt doing their job. So what this would allow the employee to do, and most folks in the closed plan are in a 3-year averaging, folks hired after 2010 are in a 5-year averaging, but say you had a year where you had that in your final 3 years, you could substitute, say, year 4 for that year where you had an injury sustained. So it would just allow us to substitute a year and not create a circumstance where somebody either was damaged by that in terms of their final pension calculation, or sticks around when they're hurt so that they can just fix the salary calculation at the end of their pension. So we would propose that you vote on this. The pension committee will weigh in on it on December 6th, and then we would ask the board to vote on this proposal on December 14th.
Great.
So we would go to years 2, 3, and 4 for that.
Yeah, for example, if it was
For
this
example.
last year or any time in that 3-year window, you'd be able to substitute a year.
All right.
How do I do, Kevin? Excellent. All right.
Good job. Item number 12 is discussion of Williamson County Growth Plan update.
We're
Here
just
we come.
following up on the discussion we had 2 weeks ago. We're not going to present to you again. It really is, you've had a couple more weeks to think about it. We have the proposal we shared with you 2 weeks ago. And if you're comfortable, we'll submit it as a draft into the process that will start next year. Not sure exactly the timing, but it's at least a starting point. Make sure you're comfortable. We tried to encompass, I think, the feedback we've gotten to this point and any other feedback you want to provide us. And if you're comfortable with this or any other further modifications of this, we'd like to go ahead and move it into the process if the board is comfortable. If you're not, we'll keep working on it. So.
Yes, Matt. Excuse me.
I have a feeling this is about as good as we're going to get, and so I like where we still have left. I get why that upper left on the northwest side over there. I get why that's still there, and you know, to the point on South Hall Farms, I get it. You know, why give up what we've already got? The chances of it getting developed and maybe pretty far off from that anyway. So I'm good with it where we are as of today.
Jason.
Thank you. I wanted to just publicly thank Andrew for sitting down and going over some of my concerns in regards to Ward 3 and where we're headed. We all recognize the growth that's going to be going on there, and just taking the concerns that the constituents there in Ward 3 had and sitting down for a better part of an hour plus just to go through some very small areas down there near where those roads were and everything, so thank you.
You can say you're welcome.
Thank you, Alderman.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this? All right. Thank you all.
We will move it forward. Thank you.
All right. Item 13, discussion regarding COVID-19 sick pay. Eric?
Yeah, let me just walk through this. If you remember at public comment 2 weeks ago, we had one of our police officers, Officer Estrada, raise a question. And it was really an inadvertent inconsistency that we had. I will say the city continued on. The federal government ended COVID sick pay requirements at the end of 2020. The city of Franklin decided to extend it for 3 more months. At that point, we ended it at the end of March, thinking vaccines were readily available and we were on the good glide path. Well, we all know that changed, and with breakthrough cases and variants and other issues, numbers surged again, and we needed to reinstate it, and we reinstated it back to August 1. So you had between April 1 and August 1 where we did not have that available to folks. Let me be clear, people received payment, they just used their sick leave. This would allow, if you want us to establish or reestablish it retroactively for that period, and what we would essentially do is replenish those sick leave balances and treat it as if it was COVID sick pay, which does not have any significant financial impact. Quite frankly, we've already paid it. It would just be a matter of how we classified that time. If you're comfortable, we'll bring a resolution forward on December 14th for you to take that action, and it kind of makes all of 2021 consistent, and we're hopeful that at the end of this year, which is the ending point for the COVID sick time, that we don't have to revisit that again. But we will continue to look at those situations and respond as we need to, but I think that will put us on an even playing field with everybody throughout the year. About 13 employees were impacted, I believe, 13 or 14.
So we had 13 during that 4-month period?
Yes. And they'd have to be documented. We go back through and make sure we've already pretty much done that, but we would close the loop on that and then restore those sick leave balances for the impacted folks. And if anybody did use vacation, I'm not aware anybody did, we'd do likewise there.
Will there be a memo sent out that just kind of lets them know that?
We will get your vote on it in 2 weeks, and then we'll go at the December meeting, and then we'll let everybody know, and we'll actually go ahead and just restore the balances. We'll let them know that we did that, but they won't need to do anything else unless we have some question about the COVID eligibility.
Matt? I know, you get in a rhythm eventually.
I just want to make the comment. It was a really proud moment. I had about 15 people in the room. I thought the biggest thing that day was getting sworn in. The 15 people in the room thought the biggest moment was him getting up to make that comment, and every one of them asking me afterwards, whatever happened to that? It was pretty awesome that within 2 weeks the city's making right. This is a very Franklin thing to do. It's the right thing to do, and I love that you're not only doing it, but you're doing it as quickly as you are from comment. So I'm all for that for sure.
All right, anybody else have any comments on that? Awesome.
We'll bring it to you in December.
So on another, stay in that same vein of really cool things the city of Franklin does, I'm going to let Eric talk about item number 14, which is discussion regarding employee compensation.
Let's go ahead and bring up the PowerPoint presentation. So we've always said that, our most important resource is our people. And so we're going to focus on a recommendation that is somewhat unusual, not something I've really ever done in my career, but I think is important as we look at it. Hopefully we can pull it up here soon. But basically there are a few things driving this. We're looking at a tightened and tightening labor market. We are looking at a higher than usual vacancy rate within the city. We're looking at an inflationary surge that we've seen nationally, but especially in the southern area of the country in the last 6 months. On the positive side, we see revenue that has been strong, that helps us be in a position to look at some options, and then look at our competitive position overall as an employer, both in the public sector but in the region overall. You'll remember when we formulated our fiscal 22 budget that we focused on one of the elements of responding to the post-COVID world and what that looked like. And we talked about a framework for a stronger Franklin. And we had 4 Ps we talked about. Pandemic response, continuing and working there, focused on our people, supporting our people, their well-being, their maintaining a strong city team, delivery of key infrastructure projects, and then the P being possibilities, building and maintaining capacity, both financially but also as an organization. And what we're going to talk about today, I think, hits primarily on the 2 Ps of people and that capacity, that possibilities component. First, looking at the labor market, as we said, there were some economic shock that we all experienced in the pandemic and a surge in unemployment, but then recovery and numbers that are near historic lows for unemployment in our county and especially in Franklin. The preliminary September numbers are at 2% unemployment. So it is competitive. We see increasing wages in targeted areas, but really across the board in a number of areas, and really the need to compete to attract and retain folks. When we look at vacancies, our budget for the time I've been here as your city administrator, we've always built in about a 3.5% vacancy rate. It's kind of cooked into our numbers. We know there's some turn, so we actually factor that in. The historic numbers are more in the range of 5%, but we use about 3.5% as a planning number, and that helps us stretch budget resources throughout our budget, meaning we know we don't 100% fund every position because there is some natural turnover. So the reality has been much higher. It's been closer to 10% overall in terms of the vacancy we see as of the beginning of this month. So we are seeing some challenge in attracting and retaining folks. And so we want to be in front of that and think about how we address that. And I will say, one of the things that we are already working and is already underway is a complete review of our city compensation plan. That is already well underway. It had been planned for the year that the pandemic hit, and that shock caused us to hold off on that, and so we have returned to that. That work is well underway, and our plan is to have the fiscal '23 budget, the new budget for next year, to reflect a comprehensive update of that plan. So that work continues, but we don't think we can wait for that. And this inflationary message is part of that. The past 6 months, we've seen inflationary impact in the southern area of, according to the Department of Labor, of 5.5%. So that impacts our employees when you especially have an employee base, 80% of which do not live in the city of Franklin. So commute is part of that, and commute-related costs and other costs are part of impacting our people. And so we realize that they are taking a hit there as well. So looking at our history, what we have done by way of compensation, the last 4 out of the last 5 years, we've had a blend of a 2.5% base salary increase and then a merit increase based on employees' performance. So you can get up to a 5%, but you're at least getting 3% at the low end, and the average is a little bit above 4% that folks have gotten in those 4 of the last 5 years. In fiscal '21, in the midst of the COVID impact, we reduced budgets very quickly and held on, and then made a cost of living adjustment at mid-year, January 1 in 2021, fiscal '21. So you'll see our history there and how we have approached it in making some form of market adjustment along with merit in most of the most recent years. Here's what's in our budget today as it stands. Effective 1st of July, we did do that general pay increase of 2.5%, and then performance-based pay increases ranging up to an additional 2.5%. We did provide in July also a $1,000 one-time pay supplement to our team members, and that is partially funded by the city's American Rescue funding that we received in May. So, and we'll give you an update of that at our next meeting in a little more detail. So we have done those things to help our employee team, and for the last 2 consecutive years, we've held the line on health insurance premiums as well. So we feel like we've done pretty well, but then when you look at this compensation history and you look at inflation as a benchmark, most years we have met or exceeded that with our cost of living adjustment. In the last 2 years, that has not been the case. So in '21 and '22. So we have a little bit of makeup to do there. Of course, we did provide performance-related increases in those years as well. But how we support it. So our primary revenue source in the general fund is the local option sales tax. We have seen strong performance in that area. In just the first 3 months of the fiscal year, we are $1.6 million over what we had budgeted in that revenue source. So that does give us confidence that we've got capacity to look at this kind of option. Let me give you the cost options for what I would like to recommend to you. I would recommend that we proceed with a mid-year cost of living adjustment of 2.5%. This would go in effect the first pay period, first paycheck that employees receive January 1. That pay period actually starts December 26th of 2021. The cost for that in this fiscal year will be $721,000. That is an annualized number of $1.4 million, but as I indicated, we've just in the first 3 months got really twice that fiscal year impact of $700,000 has already come in terms of additional revenues. That's, I guess, the positive side of the sales tax dependence that we have, that inflation actually helps us a little bit there. So finally, this recommendation is a mid-year 2.5% increase. You'll see as that lays out, that does help us address the little bit of gap that may have existed versus inflation in 21 and 22 combined. We look at that as about a 2.1% deficit. The 2.5% helps us make that up. I really look at it as a down payment towards the financial plan or the compensation plan update that is coming forward as part of the budget. We've talked already with our compensation consultant on this, and the feedback we got there is that this is, you're going to do this and then some in that plan. There's no doubt about it with what we're seeing happening in the labor market. And I would also ask that as we do this, we also move our pay grades 5%. That does not itself cause any additional pay increase except for anybody who would have dropped out of the lowest part of that pay grade. So if somehow your pay rate is below the minimum, we would bring you to the minimum. There are very, very few that are in that case. Where it really helps us is we've got probably 41 or 42 employees that are topped out, meaning they're at the top of their pay grade. And so if we don't adjust the pay grades, they won't get this but only as a one-time adjustment in their pay. This would allow us to adjust those pays, and the vast majority of those folks are longtime employees and team members that we want to make sure we're recognizing. So, you know, I guess I'll stop there, but to say I look at it as a down payment. There's more to come that will be incorporated in the fiscal year budget that we recommend to you in May of the coming year. That we will spend a lot of time early in the year talking about with budget and finances. We look at these options, but this is the minimum of what we would expect to do, and then some. And I think it shows good faith in taking care of our people. And we can easily afford it, I think, based on where we are and the conservatism that is already built into the existing budget. So if the board is comfortable with this, I would recommend bringing this forward for a vote at your December 14th meeting. We would incorporate this in the budget amendment that you will see for a first vote at that meeting and then finalize in January. But this would allow us to put this in place for our team members as a recognition of their work, but also of the impact of what's going on with inflationary pressures and everything that else is impacting them. So I'll stop there and answer any questions.
Very proud of you for not getting verklempt like you usually do, so good job. Matt?
Two questions.
That was a compliment.
Thank you.
I get, well, first of all, kudos and yes, all day long. On the recruitment side, though, I guess my question is, I'm kind of looking over your shoulder too to see Kevin over there. What are we doing on, obviously this helps retention, we got a lot of people with tenure we want to hold on to, but are we doing anything different on the recruitment side? I mean, literally you can't go down the road and not see a ton of signs for $3,000 sign-on bonuses for Amazon and everybody else. So what are we doing to actually get recruiting people? An increase on salary is not going to be enough.
Right. I think there are a couple of things we're doing. One, we're looking at the fact that prior to COVID, we didn't have the strategy of remote work. A lot of companies are realizing that does exist. And we can't have it everywhere. We do serve the public. We need to have people here in City Hall. But we do have strategies that allow some remote work. So we do emphasize that when that applies. And then I think the other thing we do is we remind people that this isn't just a job. This is serving your community, serving a community. And so we try to make sure people realize that's what this is about as well. But sure, there's more that we can do as well.
I would just say if you're going to bring a resolution, maybe just kick that around a little bit. Is there anything that should be included in there? I know we did some one-time payments to current staff, believe me, I'm not a big spender here, but we need to get people. I sat through 2 meetings today and saw a lot of vacancies up on the boards that people presented to me, and the city's growing. We're doing well. I would say if there's a resolution to come, it'd be good to also include anything else that we think we need for recruitment.
I will add, moving the pay grades helps us because that puts a more competitive number out there. And our department directors and HR working together have been more aggressive in offering deeper into that pay grade than we used to. We give them authority to go up to the first quartile, and then I approve anything above that. There's not a single thing we haven't approved to go above that when we need to. That does also create a dynamic internally where sometimes we need to do a make-right with folks who are already in those positions, and we're doing that too. So we're doing both things to bring in the talent we need within those pay grades, and then also make sure we're taking care of the folks that are already here that are working those same jobs that have proven themselves.
Right.
So that's part of what we do. We did implement a year or so ago some more aggressive pay strategies, especially in public safety, bringing police officers in at a higher rate, especially once they've made it through their probationary period. Firefighters, we've enhanced the paramedic pay in particular because that's the highest demand skill, and both increased it and converted it to an hourly rate component, meaning they get overtime on it as opposed to just a single stipend. So we have, I think, enhanced that in a couple ways too. So we continue to look at those. That'll be a big part of the discussion in the update of the comprehensive pay plan. But this is, like I said, think of this as a down payment to that, and we're going to continue to be aggressive and talk about that.
On the pay grade, my last question. On the pay grade, you
time
mentioned,
We got to hurry up. We got a meeting at 7.
I hear you. That expansion of those grades, that's temporary because the new study is going to come in and that will reset, or this will change this ultimately?
This will change it for now.
Okay.
But I expect it will change further when we
Yeah.
talk to you about the budget, the new budget.
Okay.
They're going to move 5%, and they're probably going to need to move another X percent above that. And that's something we validated with the consultant to say, we're thinking 5% as a minimum makes sense, and he confirmed that. He said, you're going to do that and then some, but you're safe in doing this now and trying to get ahead of it as best you can.
Patrick?
That was along the lines, my question is, when does the pay study start? Or when is
It's
that-
already underway.
It's underway, so when we're looking at those numbers, and this might be a budget and finance committee type, but I guess when we're comparing, year over year and comparing, we'll just need to make, obviously, most of the pay has been under the old system. But yeah, I guess so when will that be complete?
So it is underway now. It'll be done early next year, I guess I'd say.
Yes.
The things that have already been done is we've updated every job description and looked at that. And what we also do is we don't just look at our pay within a vacuum, we look at the market. And we target being in the 80th percentile or better compared to the market. And we look at comparable cities, and we look at comparable private sector pay where it's applicable. Obviously, you don't have private sector in everything we do, but in anywhere we do, we look at that as well. And so we set a benchmark, and we anchor our pay grades based on hitting that 80th percentile or better. So you will probably see some jobs shift up pay grades because of what the market's doing. For example, somebody with the CDL driver's license is going to likely be in a different pay grade a year from now than it is now, just because of what we're seeing in terms of the demand in the market. That's just an educated guess, but that's an example of what that helps us do. It's looked at and anchored in the market and being a highly competitive employer from a compensation standpoint.
Thank you.
Beth? Then we're going to
I know we're
end.
really conservative how we forecast and how we plan, but 2008 is coming again, and it's probably coming, who knows, maybe 2023, maybe 2024. So how are we gauging our budget? And we're pretty conservative, so I'm not too worried about that, but I just want to throw that out there
Sure.
because we get slapped in the face in 2023 with that. How are we going to react, and how does that play into it?
Well, we have been down that road before a couple times, and we even were just in the last year and a half. We very quickly modified our budgets to reflect the uncertainty and financial impact of the pandemic, and of course, we did it back in 2009, 2010 timeframe. So we do have substantial reserves built in. You have your reserve policy, but we're well above that, so that provides a capacity to absorb a blow. And, you know, our team did a fantastic job at looking at controlling expenditures over this last year and a half because they're aware of that. And we ask folks when they need to make modifications in their budget to do it at a level they can sustain. We don't just look at our budget in a one-year window. We do look at 3 and 5 years out to look at sustainability there. So all of those are factors. And when you get a budget that our team recommends and that I recommend to you, we are looking at how we are able to sustain service. And part of that is attracting and retaining talent that can deliver on that service. So this is a balancing act to do this, but I believe it's something we can sustain and support, and that that the price tag down the line could actually be greater. And we want to try to show that value to people that have stuck with us and that are invested in our team, and I think that will make an impact.
Clyde, and then we're out.
Okay, 2 or 3 comments. We'll look at this in budget and finance. I do encourage everyone to make sure that we are understanding of this mid-year adjustment and the impact that it has on the discussions that we have in February, March, April, and May. And I think Bev's comment as far as 2008 versus last year, 2008 was much more severe than last year. Certainly for the city, I guarantee you that. There's no question about that.
It was, certainly.
So I think that was an appropriate comment that she made. And I do thank you for going through all of this that you've gone through. I would point out again that we did do we did a 1-year police officer, $50,000. Okay. So, and I don't know exactly the exact numbers that it affects the fire department on some of that, but I know we made adjustments last year to more than one department.
Yes.
All right, see everybody at 7 o'clock.